Imagine drifting in the late Jurassic Ocean 150 million years ago. The surface is a mirror of turquoise calm. You feel safe because the monsters of this era, the allosaurs and stegosaurs, are landlocked miles away. You are wrong. The true danger is gliding silently beneath you. Rising from the abyss is a shadow the length of a railway carriage, moving with the kinetic energy of a torpedo. It possesses a skull larger than a human being, armed with teeth the size of cucumbers, and a bite force estimated to be 4 times stronger than a Tyrannosaurus Rex. This is Pliosaurus. It is not a dinosaur. It is the worst nightmare the ocean ever produced, a bone-crushing machine that ruled the high seas eons before the great white shark existed. The story of Pliosaurus begins with massive fragments that baffled the Victorian mind. In the early 19th century, the limestone coasts of England yielded bones of inexplicable size. The renowned anatomist Sir Richard Owen examined these remains, noting the neck vertebrae were short and compressed, unlike the long necks of the plesiosaurs. He named it Pliosaurus, or Pliocene lizard, a mistake regarding geological dating, but the name stuck. However, the true fame of this animal exploded in the 21st century with the arrival of a mysterious specimen known simply as Predator X. In 2006, on the frozen archipelago of Svalbard, Norway, a team of paleontologists led by Dr. Jørn Hurum unearthed a treasure. In the unforgiving permafrost, they found the skull of a giant marine reptile crushed by millions of years of geological pressure. The excavation was a war against nature. The team worked in bone-chilling cold, guarded by riflemen protecting them from polar bears, racing against time before the Arctic winter descended. When the fragments were finally pieced together, the world held its breath. This was a monster with a skull over 2 meters long. Originally dubbed Predator X by the media, science eventually named it Pliosaurus funke. It propelled the genus from a footnote in textbooks to the superstar of the paleontological world, challenging the throne of every predator that ever lived. To understand why Pliosaurus was the apex predator of its age, one must look at the engineering of its head. It belonged to the Pliosauroidea, while their cousins, the long-necked plesiosaurs, evolved small heads for snapping up fish. Pliosaurus went in the exact opposite evolutionary direction. It invested everything in the skull. The neck of Pliosaurus was incredibly short and thick, acting as a solid mounting bracket for a colossal head. That skull was the ultimate weapon. It was triangular, tapering toward the snout, but immensely wide at the back. This geometry provided massive surface area for the adductor mandibuli muscles, the primary muscles used to close the jaw. The back of the skull possessed high, bony crests, similar to the sagittal crest found on a gorilla, but on a monstrous scale. These crests served as anchor points for muscles likely as thick as a human torso. Scientists used computer modeling to scan the skull of Predator X. The results were staggering. The bite force was estimated to be up to 33,000 pounds per square inch. For comparison, a modern saltwater crocodile has a bite force of about 3,700 pounds. The legendary Tyrannosaurus Rex is estimated at roughly 8,000 to 12,000 pounds. If these numbers hold true, Pliosaurus possessed the strongest bite in vertebrate history. It could crush a car the way a human crushes a grape. The mechanics of the jaw allowed it to generate this force throughout the mouth, meaning no part of the prey was safe. A bite force of 30,000 pounds is useless if the teeth cannot handle the stress. If Pliosaurus had the thin teeth of a great white shark, they would shatter upon impact with bone. Nature needed a stronger design. The teeth of Pliosaurus are marvels of structural engineering. They are not flat blades. They are conical and trihedral in cross-section. If you cut a Pliosaurus tooth in half, it looks like a triangle with rounded corners. One face of the tooth is flat, while the other two are curved and ridged with enamel striations. This trihedral shape makes the tooth incredibly resistant to bending and breaking. It creates a structure mathematically optimized to withstand violent torsion. When Pliosaurus bit down on a struggling prey item, the unique shape prevented the teeth from snapping. The ridges on the enamel acted like the grooves on a file, helping to grip slimy prey and channel water away from the bite point to increase friction. These were not knives designed for slicing. They were spikes designed for puncturing and pulverizing. Size and jaw strength were not its only weapons. Pliosaurus possessed a unique method of locomotion that no modern marine animal utilizes. Sharks and whales swim using their tails. Pliosaurus swam with wings. It possessed 4 limbs modified into massive hydrofoils, functioning like airplane wings underwater. This method is known as underwater flight. Most aquatic tetrapods use their front limbs for thrust and their back limbs merely for steering. Biomechanical studies suggest that Pliosaurus could use all 4 paddles simultaneously. By flapping the front and rear flippers in an alternating rhythm, Pliosaurus could create a continuous vortex wake, generating constant thrust with no dead spots. Imagine a 4-wheel drive racing car compared to a 2-wheel drive car. Pliosaurus had the capacity for explosive acceleration. When it spotted prey, it could engage all 4 engines, launching its 40-ton body forward at rocket speed. While not an efficient long-distance cruiser like a modern whale in a short-range ambush, its acceleration was unmatched. For years, television documentaries exaggerated the size of pliosaurs, particularly Liopleurodon, claiming lengths of up to 25 meters. Modern science has debunked these mythical numbers, bringing the animal back to the realm of physics. However, the truth is still enough to induce vertigo. The largest specimens, such as Pliosaurus funke or the recently analyzed Pliosaurus cavani, indicate the animal reached lengths of 10 to 13 meters. While smaller than the mythical 25 meters, the mass is what matters. A 12-meter Pliosaurus was a dense block of muscle and bone weighing between 30 and 50 tons. It was twice the mass of the largest modern orca and significantly heavier than a humpback whale. Its skull alone was over 2.5 meters long. Visualize a head the size of a smart car rushing toward you. Its actual size pushed the biological limits for a macropredator. If it were larger, the metabolic cost of moving such a massive body would have exceeded the amount of food available in the Jurassic Ocean. It sat at the edge of what is thermodynamically possible for a hunter. How does one find prey in a vast ocean? Pliosaurus did not rely on sight alone, although its vision was excellent. The skull of Pliosaurus contained a sophisticated sensory suite. Scientists have discovered neurovascular foramina, or small pits, on its snout. In life, these housed pressure sensors similar to the organs found on the jaws of modern crocodiles. These sensors allowed Pliosaurus to detect hydrodynamic wakes. Every fish or reptile moving through the water creates a pressure wave. Pliosaurus could feel the movement of prey from a distance, hunting in total darkness or murky water without needing to see the target. More importantly, its nasal structure was unique. Water would flow into one nostril and out the other, passing over a specialized chamber containing chemosensory cells. This internal plumbing suggests that Pliosaurus was a directional sniffer. It could smell blood or pheromones in stereo. By comparing the strength of the scent between the nostrils, it could pinpoint the exact direction of the source, turning it into a giant, swimming bloodhound. Pliosaurus was a specialized hypercarnivore, the top of the food pyramid. To sustain a 50-ton body, it had to eat a lot. The Kimmeridge Clay Formation, where many Pliosaurus fossils are found, paints a picture of a shallow, warm, and dangerous sea covering much of ancient Europe. The waters were teeming with life. Massive shoals of ammonites floated in the water column. While Pliosaurus could crush them, they were likely mere snacks. The real menu consisted of larger game. There was Leadsichthys, a filter-feeding fish that could grow to 16 meters. This giant fish was the Jurassic equivalent of a baleen whale. A Pliosaurus could attack a Leadsichthys, tearing massive chunks of flesh from its flanks in an act of predation resembling flesh grazing. Then there were the other marine reptiles. The long-necked plesiosaurs like Cryptoclydus and dolphin-like ichthyosaurs like Ophthalmosaurus were abundant. We have found fossils of these smaller reptiles bearing the distinct tooth marks of pliosaurs. Some plesiosaur flippers have been found severed, and some ichthyosaurs found bitten in half. Pliosaurus was a cannibal of the reptile world, consuming its own distant cousins. In 2023, the world was reminded of the power of this animal. At the famous Jurassic coast in Dorset, UK, fossil enthusiast ExtinctEchoes recovered another massive Pliosaurus skull. This specimen was special due to its preservation. It was found protruding halfway out of a sheer cliff face, requiring the team to rappel down to extract it. The skull was preserved in 3D, virtually undistorted. It provided the most detailed look ever at the surface of the skull. It revealed the parietal eye, a photosensitive third eye on top of the head used to track light cycles or to orient the animal for navigation. This discovery reinforced the notion that these animals were incredibly robust. The sagittal crest was so pronounced it suggests the neck muscles were strong enough to execute a death shake. Like a crocodile thrashing a zebra, Pliosaurus could likely grab a victim and violently shake its head, using the inertia of the prey's own body to tear it apart. A crucial educational distinction must be made. Pliosaurus was not a dinosaur. Dinosaurs are a specific group of archosaurs defined by a hole in their hip socket and legs positioned directly under their bodies. They lived primarily on land. Pliosaurus belonged to the Sauropterygia. They are marine reptiles, more closely related to modern lizards and snakes than to Tyrannosaurus. Their ancestors were small, lizard-like animals living on the shorelines of the Triassic. Over millions of years, they returned to the ocean. Their fingers lengthened and fused into paddles. Their bodies became streamlined and stiff. They lost the ability to walk on land completely. This is a magnificent example of convergent evolution. The shape of Pliosaurus resembles a modern killer whale, not because they are related, but because physics dictates that this is the optimal shape for being a hyperpredator in a fluid medium. For a long time, it was a mystery how these giants reproduced. Sea turtles must haul themselves onto beaches to lay eggs. A 50-ton Pliosaurus could not do this. If it tried to crawl onto a beach, its own immense weight would crush its internal organs, and it would suffocate without the buoyancy of water. Therefore, Pliosaurus must have been viviparous, giving birth to live young at sea. Fossils of related plesiosaurs have been found with single, large embryos inside them. This suggests that pliosaurs were K-selected species. Instead of laying hundreds of eggs like a sea turtle, they invested a massive amount of energy into a single, large baby. This baby Pliosaurus would have been born capable of swimming, but likely vulnerable. This implies parental care. It is possible that Pliosaurus mothers protected their calves for a period, teaching them how to hunt. This image of a nurturing parent contrasts sharply with the violence of the adult, adding complexity to their behavior. The Jurassic Ocean was a crowded battlefield. Pliosaurus shared the waters with another group of terrifying reptiles, the metriorhynchids, or marine crocodiles. These were true crocodiles that had fully adapted to the sea. They lost their heavy armor, their legs turned into flippers, and their tails developed a shark-like fluke. Species like Dorsasaurus were the rivals of Pliosaurus. Dorsasaurus was nicknamed the Beast due to its bullet-shaped skull and serrated teeth. While smaller than Pliosaurus, reaching only about 4 to 5 meters, they were aggressive hunters. Niche partitioning likely kept them from constant warfare. Dorsasaurus possessed slicing teeth, perfect for shearing meat, whereas Pliosaurus had crushing teeth. However, competition was inevitable. We have fossil evidence of violent interactions, but in a one-on-one fight, the sheer mass of Pliosaurus guaranteed its dominance. It was the heavyweight champion, while the marine crocodiles were the middleweights. No empire lasts forever. During the transition from the late Jurassic to the early Cretaceous, the reign of the giant pliosaurs began to falter. The exact cause of their decline is complex, likely a combination of changing ocean chemistry and shifting tectonic plates. As continents drifted, the shallow seaways Pliosaurus preferred began to change. Water circulation patterns shifted, affecting the populations of ammonites and fish. Simultaneously, the biological landscape changed. The ichthyosaurs crashed in diversity. New, faster sharks evolved. Eventually, in the late Cretaceous, a new group of lizards entered the water, the mosasaurs. The mosasaurs were the final nail in the coffin for pliosaur dominance. They were faster, more adaptable, and possessed better jaw mechanics for swallowing large prey. The giant pliosaurs gradually disappeared from the fossil record, leaving the oceans to be fought over by the next generation of monsters. Today, Pliosaurus lives on in our collective imagination as the archetype of the sea monster. It represents the primal human fear of the deep, the idea that something huge, ancient, and hungry is watching from below. When we stand before its skull in a museum, we are not looking at a primitive failure. We are looking at a masterpiece of adaptation. For 20 million years, Pliosaurus was the undisputed ruler of 70% of the planet's surface. It reminds us that the history of life is not just a history of things crawling onto land. It is also a history of things returning to the sea, growing to impossible sizes, and ruling with an iron jaw. Pliosaurus was the ultimate solution to the problem of marine predation. It did not need the agility of a dolphin or the sensory perfection of a shark. It relied on brute force and a head designed to deconstruct skeletons. Its story is one of absolute dominance, proving that while Tyrannosaurus walked the land, the real monsters were wet. If you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe to Extinct Echoes. We dredge up the nightmares of the past. Who claims the title of the ultimate marine predator, the crushing jaws of Pliosaurus, or the sheer size of the later Mosasaurus?